Veryl, thank you very much for joining us. Do you not think that there are better ways that Extinction Rebellion could sort of get their message across?
Thanks, Nana, for having me on the show. That's a really good question. I feel like we are in a very dire situation. We've tried everything in the normal way to bring about change, to raise awareness. We saw last year at COP26, we saw leaders from all across the world descending on Scotland. We saw loads of companies who were interested in taking more climate action come to Scotland to discuss what we can do about the climate crisis. And they set goals and they set targets. But what are we seeing from that? We're seeing none of those targets being met. In fact, the government is backtracking on its net zero targets by investing more into fossil fuels. They've got about 40 new oil and gas projects in their pipelines. And yeah, just as Paul mentioned, they're starting to also give more funding for the North Sea oil and gas projects as well. And they're even exploring fracking out of everything. So we are seeing a complete U-turn in what they said at COP26 last year. I just want to say, so the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, who's the executive director, said that if governments are serious about the climate crisis, there can be no further investments into fossil fuels this year. And he said that last year. And this year, we are carrying on with fossil fuels. We can't afford this. We're seeing more and more extreme weather events happening all across the world right now. And I've got family in India, Goa, and I visit them once a year, and I've experienced the weather getting worse. Yeah. I've seen the beaches starting to disappear.
We all have, and actually, Veryl, it does vary. But I want to ask you a few questions then, because I mean, the government are moving towards removing fossil fuels. None of us want to use them, but in the process of doing that, you still have to use them to move to the next process. And saying now seems somewhat unrealistic. I mean, first of all, I mean, I've got a little quiz question for you then, just to see, because you're talking about this so eloquently. Do you know how fossil fuels come about?
Yeah, so fossil fuels have to be drilled from the ground, and they're mainly.
Do you know how they're actually made? I mean, we know they're drilled from the ground or fracked or whatever, but do you actually know how the Earth creates fossil fuels?
They basically come. They're kind of like they've been in the ground for ages, and they have basically formed over millions of years, mainly from all the organic matter in the past. But I think
what do you mean by that? Then? I'm just thinking what you know, because you're protesting about it. I'm just wondering what you know about them. So shall I tell you what they come from? Because you were saying, but you're not quite there. I mean, obviously they're a hydrocarbon, and they're actually formed from the remains of dead plants and animals. That's how the fossil fuels. So they're now obviously naturally occurring. I've got another question for you, though. OK, so you want to end this fossil fuel business now, and you're saying now, as in like tomorrow, I presume that means. So I want to ask, the very bridge that you're campaigning on is probably made out of steel and iron. So can you actually make fossil-free steel?
Yes, we can, and there are solutions. There are solutions for that. There are already solutions for that. But what
are you aware that you can't actually make it to scale? So you're saying end it now. Right now, we do not have the technology to make that steel to scale right now, but we are working on it, as you said. So I'm just looking at how realistic what you're asking for, because you're saying now. It doesn't seem realistic to me. All right, then what about so the bridge is probably constructed with things like cement, OK? So can you make cement without coal, which is a fossil fuel?
I think going back to your question, what we're asking about when you're referring to now, what we're saying is we need to end further investments into fossil fuels. We need to end further subsidies, and we need to stop funding all future projects. It's a simple ask. That's all we're asking for now. Because burning fossil fuels is causing emissions to rise rapidly, which is causing chaos all across the world. And what's going to come 10 years from now is going to be unimaginable. That's the message that we're trying to send to the government.
See, the thing is, Veryl, we're already moving that towards it. But in order to stop our reliance on people like Vladimir Putin, who's currently waging war on a complete, it seems like somewhat of a genocide, we are upping at the ante so that we produce our own fuels ourselves. We're reducing our carbon emissions by not taking that fuel from elsewhere. In the meantime, whilst we move to renewable energy sources, which is exactly what you're after. So we're all a little bit confused as to why you're bothering this. And by the way, you can actually make cement without coal, but if you do it, you still get roughly the same amount of CO2 emissions anyway. So just for your... Thank you very much, Beryl. That's Beryl Rodriguez. He is a mechanical engineer and part of Extinction Rebellion.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.